Thank you very much, Mr Twigg, and it's an honour to serve under your chairmanship today. Can I start by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Harrogate and Knaresborough, for securing this incredibly important debate and setting out so eloquently and passionately what a deeply concerning issue this is, and not just across his constituency, but as we've heard from honourable members and right honourable members on all sides of the chamber, that this is an issue right across the country, from Yorkshire right the way down to Kent and Sussex and everywhere in between. So, look, it feels a bit basic and obvious to say it, but it bears repeating today that every child deserves to be able to get to school. There is a legal requirement to educate our children, and ensuring they are able to get there is a fairly basic right, in my view. But they also deserve to get to school safely, efficiently and on time. Yet the shocking stories that we've heard today from around the country show just how hard that is for far too many children. And the fact that the changes in Yorkshire mean that parents are being charged almost £900 for bus passes is frankly ridiculous, Mr Twigg. Now, yet sadly, these stories are symptoms of wider failures by a number of administrations to consider the needs of rural communities and send families. And I hesitate to talk about rural communities as a London MP and a born and bred London girl who's both of my children to their primary and secondary school walk fewer than 10 minutes to get to school. But I hear from colleagues in my own party, and as we've heard from others, about the real challenges in rural communities of getting to school. And I have seen that when I've been on visits to Shropshire and talking to families and school teachers up there. Now, under the last Conservative government, it has to be said, bus services withered. Between 2015 and 2023, the number of local passenger journeys fell by a quarter. That's 1 billion trips, with many routes scrapped altogether. Now, we've heard reference today to the Public Accounts Committee's recent report on send home-to-school transport, and that report highlighted the ongoing decline of bus services, particularly in rural areas, and it notes that better local transport options would reduce home-to-school transport costs. I'll come on to address the soaring costs that local authorities are facing when it comes to home-to-school transport, but I want to take a moment to focus on the point that it is the most vulnerable in society who are impacted by poor transport provision. And I find it somewhat surprising that the Department for Education seems to have little interest in what transport looks like for those who use it, because, as we've heard, they don't collect clear data as to who receives home-to-school transport, or even whether it is actually reaching those in need. But as we've heard today from all sides of the House, members here do know. And it's the children who are being made to feel that their education doesn't matter because of where they live, who have to miss after-school clubs and activities, who are made to walk on unsafe roads, often in the dark before school starts. And it's the parents who have, as we've heard very, very clearly from some of the case studies today, who are forced to sacrifice their time and income to drive their children to school, all because a computer said no because of the rules that have been put in place by their local authorities. And it's even grandparents or other extended family who are forced to go out of their way and step up when no one else is able to, although Cornwall to Kent, as the Honourable Member for Sittingbourne and Sheppey pointed out, seems rather extreme and pushing it somewhat. However, there is a larger underlying issue here. We have seen the costs of home-to-school transport soar alongside the need for send provision. And whilst the government has made the welcome move of committing to writing off local authorities' historic send deficits, sadly this doesn't extend to transport costs. And I and my Liberal Democrat colleagues have been urging the government to exempt send transport operators from the government's national insurance contribution increases to curb even further cost increases. So I hope the Minister will address this in her response today and set out what the DfE is doing to address this issue now, because sort of pushing that into the reforms that we've seen announced, which we know are going to take years to implement, I fear that that's going to be too slow in addressing this particular issue. And indeed, I'd say to the Minister, the cancellation of a number of planned special schools around the country does not help this situation. I strongly urge the Minister to revisit and reverse the cancellation of 18 planned special schools, as I think it was my honourable friend, the member for Woking, said that if that specialist provision was closer to home, then you wouldn't need to spend quite so much on home-to-school transport. Yes,
I thank my honourable friend for giving way on that point. I've been campaigning since before I was elected to get the special school for autism in Bilton Woodfield reopened, something that's been dragging on for now years. Does she agree with me that we need to see North Yorkshire Council, the trust that's now been appointed, and the DFE work together to get that open on time for this September?
100%. I agree with him that they need to crack on as soon as possible, and the challenge we had with the government announcements before Christmas is that some local authorities were given the option to crack on with a special school or money instead, and I know from talking to councillors on the ground who said, well, we went for the money instead, that actually it's not going to be anywhere close to what they need to cover the provision that they were looking for, but they kind of felt forced to take that as an option, and I'm really worried about what these announcements are going to mean in terms of continued transferring of children with special educational needs and disability very far away from home. And we know that parents of children with SEND battle enough against the system as it is. And it seems really unfair that they're now being made to choose between the right school for their child, but not being able to get them there without further sacrificing time, income, or actually getting their child to school. But not one that can actually provide the right support for their child. Now, a number of honourable members have today highlighted the cliff edge in transport provision for students over 16, both with and without SEND. Now, local authorities don't have a duty to provide a universal transport system after the age of 16. And for young people with SEND, their access to education is at the discretion of their local authority. And given what we've heard about financial pressures, it's sadly no surprise that young people with SEND are around 80% more likely to not be in education, employment or training than the average student. The Public Accounts Committee has said, and I quote, "The Department for Education seems apparently unconcerned about the clarity of offering for this age group or the impact losing transport at 16 may have." And my honourable friend, the member for South Devon, who can't be here today, has told me that the cost of a Stagecoach South West term rider increased in September 2025 from £238 per term to £444 per term. For those sixth form students who aren't entitled to free transport, they're being forced to pay over £1,300 per academic year to access education. And I want to be clear with the Minister, that increase was due to the increase in national insurance contribution, which meant that over and above all the other inflationary cost pressures that they, like other companies, are facing, they needed to generate an additional £3,500 per year per vehicle to make ends meet. So in light of the Milburn report published last week and the shocking numbers of young people not in education, employment or training, it's really deeply disappointing that the government's policy on national insurance has exacerbated this problem, and that the Minister, like me, is a London MP, where we're very, very fortunate. Our 16 to 18-year-olds have free transport to be able to get to college and education. So this isn't an issue for our constituents, but it's shocking to read those numbers for residents in other parts of the country. So, Mr Twigg, in conclusion, I understand that local authorities are under immense financial pressure, and the former Prime Minister, who's no longer in his place, rightly said this is a problem for local authorities of all political colours right across the country. Sadly, the national insurance policy has made this worse. I hope the Minister will consider the exemption I've called for, and I want to echo my honourable friend's request for the government to look at reviewing and updating national guidance on home-to-school transport. And I pay tribute to my honourable friend for Eastbourne for the passion with which he has campaigned for his constituent and the terrible, terrible case of Lewis. And I urge the government to look at standards in terms of safeguarding around home-to-school transport. Thank you, Mr Twigg.